So, the first reading today is Wisdom 9:13 through 18. And Donna, would you like to read? What page is that?
Yeah.
I've got the magnificent.
It is page 982.
Page 82.
A reading from the book of wisdom. Who can know God's counsel? Or who can conceive what the Lord intends? For the deliberations of mortals are timid, and unsure are our plans. For the corruptible body burdens the soul, and the earthen shelter weighs down the mind that has many concerns. And scarce do we guess the things on earth, and what is within our grasp we find with difficulty. But when things are in heaven, who can search them out? Or who ever knew your counsel, except you had given wisdom and sent your Holy Spirit from on high? And thus were the paths of those on earth made straight. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Nicely.
Yep, that's perfect. So, first point, wisdom is a gift. Yeah, so it's something that we receive. It's not something we seize. I think that's something to really think about. For the deliberation of mortals are timid, and unsure are our plans. So our plans are faulty without God's grace. So we need His grace to keep us on the right path. And scarce do we guess the things on earth, and what is within our grasp we find it with difficulty. But when things are in heaven, who can search them out? So we live in a finite world, right? I mean, the things around us are common, and we don't really even understand how everything works around here in this finite world. So how are we going to understand the things that are infinite, the things of God? And that's kind of the point, is that with God we can understand more, but our wisdom is limited. God's wisdom also orders our paths. Go down at the end, it says, and thus were the paths of those on earth made straight. So we need to align our desires with the wisdom of God. We need to, and what that's going to do is, if you remember last week, the narrow path that leads to heaven, that's where we want to be led. We want to be led on that narrow path. And this kind of ties in with the other readings. We're going to hear about if you're if you're a disciple, you're going to pick up your cross, and follow me. So we're going to have this cross that God gives us, and we'll dive into that. How the cross, what does that represent? It's not nice things typically. The cross, in the eyes of the people of Rome, was it wasn't even to be on the lips of Roman citizens. It was that brutal and that disgusting. And so they thought it was unfitting to even talk about the cross because of the brutality of that kind of torturous murder that punishment that they would put people through. And typically that, I mean, in war, what they'll do is they'll do something so brutal that it'll dissuade other people from rebelling. And they plant the crosses, and that would be a warning. Don't mess with Rome, because all your people will end up like these people on the hills. And they put them on the highest points. So when you're going through, you would see them, and it'd be a warning to you. And that's typically how tyrants will use extreme fear to keep people in line.
That's what they did in Mexico too, for the Cristeros back in 1917.
Yeah, I mean, Genghis Khan did the same thing. I mean, it's
Wasn't the Jewish people for crucifixion, all of them? That was their punishment that was dealt out. Crucified people.
Well, Rome was the one that came up with this. They kind of perfected the torture aspect of the crucifixion, and they had it so that the person wouldn't die too quickly. That was typically how they wanted to do it. They wanted them to suffer. It was extreme punishment and suffering. And so we, when we think about that, we're going to have a cross. That's what you got to think about. It's not You know, I mean, it's we don't have people that are getting crucified now, so we don't really understand the brutality and just the terror of it. But if you go back, that was something that would put fear into most. You know, they'd see it, and it's just the most brutal, devastating type of death. Let's see. So unaided by, on our own, we cannot grasp God's designs. That's the other last point that I wanted to bring out. Without God's help, we can't understand his designs, even for our own life. And so it's a gift. And so just remember that. Faith is a gift. And I think it's easy to look upon other people. I think we have to be careful because you'll run into people and you'll think, well, they're just a bunch of heathens or whatever. You got to remember that faith is a gift, and you should be praying for them to receive the gift of faith. And it's up to them to receive that gift. So they may be, you know, there's people who don't get that gift of faith until later in their life. I mean, there's people that, you know, like the good thief, you know, that was right on the cross. Remember me, Lord, when you come into your kingdom. And so we want to pray for people so that they'll get that gift of faith. But ultimately, if God gives you the gift, you have to say yes to it. So we do have free will to accept it or reject it. But I think there's...
I mean, once you get a gift, you don't take it and put it on a shelf. You know, you get it, you open it, you use it.
Especially if you're a kid and it's Christmas time, you know, you get that right away. You're waiting.
What's the sin is wrapping that paper.
Yeah.
Throwing it
I think
away.
every kid did that. I never did that.
Some kids unwrap the gifts and then wrap them
Yes.
back up and put them under the tree.
Yes,
What's the fun of that?
yeah, you could tell they did it, because it was like,
We were poor, we had to go to Goodfellas to get stuff.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I remember that. I was
Because those
hungry.
people were giving, think about it, they were giving to help, like
Right.
Jim used to work at Meyer,
Mhm.
Shop the Hero, remember? You can't hear,
Oh, yeah, I could,
Shop the Hero,
yeah.
yeah, so he did that with the kids, he said, what,
Oh,
how, you know, to see these kids who needed stuff and how enjoyable that was for him to spend that time doing that, many years, so.
So I think the last point is that this kind of pushes us to have humility, intellectual humility too, because I think, and this is just in philosophy, it's, I don't know what I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where you got to understand when you reach that point that I don't even know what I don't know. I mean, there's many times where you're approaching a new task, and that takes humility to say, I don't even know the right questions to ask here. You know, so you can't even know the correct way of learning something. And especially if you're going into something that's new, if you're doing any type of new project or something, that's where it's better to sometimes just get a mentor or learn. And ultimately that's what, you know, we're learning, you know, that's why Paul had he was a spiritual father for people. And so was, you know, all the different apostles and disciples and our priests, you know, I mean, we're following him and hopefully guiding us on the right path so we can get on that narrow path, because sometimes we don't even know the right questions to ask for. And I think back 20 years ago, and I thought I knew more than I did, you know, but I didn't even know what I didn't know. And so and right now I'm thinking, well, I don't even know what I don't know still. And so we just humbly say, Lord, whatever you want me to know, please help me with that. And what I don't need to know, I don't really need to know. And so I think that's important too, that I need to know enough to get to heaven. That's the reality of it. And also I need to know enough to help other people get to heaven. So teach others. So God knows what we need and when we need it and how we need it. And as I get older, I think, well, I used to know that, but I don't remember it anymore. You know what I mean? Because there's just so much knowledge. And so you don't retain everything. But when you hear it again, you're like, oh yeah, I learned that. You know, it's kind of comes back. But I think that's where there is limits to what we know and our, you know, it's just part of life. It's part of being human.